Hello, everyone. Happy Saturday, and thank you very much for joining today's stream. Hopefully, there are going to be no technical issues this time around. Since this morning, I was dealing with an old notebook that I'm using right now, which is a bit more powerful than one that I was using previously. Although it does have some technical issues also, but at least because it's more powerful, hopefully video will not freeze as it was the case yesterday and day before. Anyways, let me know, dear friends, in the chat if you can, if quality is okay. So it is 10th of January, of course, 2026, 12 o'clock, middle of the day by Moscow time, and as always, I have prepared quite a number of news on some major developments that Russian media public is focused on, and I hope you will find news segment informative and useful. After the news segment, dear friends, if there will be any super chat on Rumble, where I'm streaming simultaneously to YouTube, or if there are gonna be any questions or the comments through other support platforms, Boosty or PayPal, of course, I will react on it. And so, yes, that's being said, dear friends, let's go through some news. I can see a comment from our moderator, John Abanzo Beans, that it looks okay for now. So hopefully it will stay this way. I mean, technical side of the stream. So that's being said, let's go through some news, dear friends. And first of all, of course, I will start with yesterday's Oreshnik missile strike that Russian armed forces conducted towards the western Ukraine, towards the Lvov region, where, according to some estimates, underground gas storage facility was hit. According to other opinions, there could be some other targets too for Oreshnik, for example, underground bunker, where potentially quite a number of NATO officers were operating. As I said yesterday, I think it was a gas storage facility because there was issues with the gas supplies throughout the western Ukraine yesterday after this strike. But one does not rule out other one, right? One scenario does not rule out other scenario. There could be both in the same place because underground gas storage facilities are tremendous infrastructure, isn't it? I was searching all day yesterday and this morning for some details how successful this strike was, but I have not seen not a single picture even of the area that was targeted. Kiev regime is sharing online some fragments, some details of something, and Kiev regime is claiming that it's elements of the Oreshnik missile system. Difficult to say, obviously, and I'm not inclined to trust anything that comes out of Kiev regime. But yet again, no indicators, no information whatsoever for this moment how successful or how damaging this Russian strike with Oreshnik was. And I see in the chat, dear friends, a member of our community was asking what exactly this Oreshnik missile system is. And although it is classified information, understandably so, based on open sources, we can say that Oreshnik is a hypersonic ground-based, mobile ground-based missile system, medium-range missile system that carries a few dozen of warheads that are once launched, lifted up to space, right, and then coming down from the spacer with a tremendous speed to hit their targets. Even though, according to some reports, during the yesterday's strike, warheads of Oreshnik did not have their explosives in it, kinetic energy itself is so powerful with such a speeds of 10, 12, 14,000 kilometers an hour that kinetic energy itself can obliterate basically anything, right, that this projectile will hit. Also, Oreshnik is a nuclear-capable missile system, and that's why, by the way, American side, I'm quite sure, British side, French side, China, all the nuclear powers basically knew upfront that Russia was preparing launch of this nuclear capable missile, because I believe there is agreement between the sides that whenever nuclear capable weaponry is launched, medium and long range weaponry, that is intercontinental ballistic missiles or Oreshnik, for example, sides are informing each other to make sure that there's going to be no human error, which will then trigger some unintended consequences, right? So American side knew about these preparations from Russia, that the Oreshnik going to be used, and the US then informed the Kiev regime, and that's why some 10 to 12 hours, if not more, before Oreshnik strike, there was already reports in the media that Moscow most likely was planning to deploy this missile system. Yet again, it is interesting to know a level of damage on the ground, but nothing is available yet. Although I think it is important to know that strike took place in western Ukraine, not far away from a border with the NATO border with Poland. To be more precise, some Western propaganda outlets, some Kiev regime's propaganda outlets say that Oreshnik warhead struck a few dozen meters away from the border itself, which is not true. Obviously, it was a little bigger distance, but nevertheless, it was right there on close to a border. And this is a message, I guess, not just a military operation to eliminate critical infrastructure of the hostile side, but also a message to enemies of Russia, first of all, globalist control regimes in Europe and globalists themselves, and all their allies, that Russia's patience has its limits, and Western ruling class should be more careful in their further steps that they're gonna potentially take against Russia, because next time Oreshnik missiles are launched, they might strike not just on the Kiev control territory, but elsewhere too. But even though mostly society is focused on this Oreshnik strike, understandably so, it is quite impressive weapon system. And for example, Kiev regime demanded emergency UN Security Council meeting following this Oreshnik missile strike that might take place maybe today, maybe tomorrow or day after. There was other strikes too. That Russian militaries conducted, long-range precision strikes on the military, logistical, energy infrastructure of the hostile side, on the Kiev control territory. And as a result of these strikes, there are massive blackouts throughout the Kiev control territory. Dnipropetrovsk city, which is a big city, by the way, Kharkov, Kryvyi Rog, Kiev itself, and many other areas. And yesterday, mayor of Kiev, for example, Klitschko, urged residents of the capital of this former Soviet republic to basically leave the city if possible. And I can give you a quote from what he says. I appeal to the residents of the capital who have their opportunity to temporarily leave the city, where there are alternative sources of electricity and heat, to do so. And this is also obviously important. You know, dear friends, I was saying for quite a while, throughout November, December, basically, that it would be very wise if residents of on the Kiev control territory, especially in the big cities, will flee for Europe for the time being, because obviously Russia has no options but to take out energy grid of Kiev regime, energy infrastructure, which is used obviously for military purposes and is a legit target. And I was recommending people on the Kiev control territory to flee for Europe, at least until the spring, right? Late spring, when there is not cold, at least, right? No more, especially from the cities, because in absence of electricity, in absence of heating, obviously it's next to impossible to stay in big cities. By the way, infrastructure, logistics is going to collapse in such situation, and neither me, neither anybody else, by the way, here in Russia, want ordinary innocent people on a Q control territory to experience any more hardship than they are already have to, right? And now Klitschko himself, based on objective realities on the ground, is issuing such a recommendation or the warning for residents of Kiev to evacuate, and it is going to be a wise decision if people will listen. Yesterday, a number of sources reported that in a heating system throughout the Kiev, water was let out, right, to prevent freezing of the system, which will completely destroy it, right? So that means there going to be no heating in a number of districts of Kiev for a sustainable, volume of time, and definitely it will make all the sense if residents of Kiev evacuate somewhere else, right, or in some village if they have dachas, as we call it, or in Europe. By the way, Western ruling class, globalist control regimes throughout the Europe are responsible, obviously, for this proxy war that they are waging against Russia, and they are responsible to take care of Ukrainian refugees, and they should provide them with everything necessary. It's their obligation, and people on Kiev control territory should demand such a attitude, because yet again, Western ruling class, Western countries are absolutely responsible for everything that happened to this former Soviet republic. But nevertheless, let's continue with some other news. And well, we have reports that Russian armed forces liberated Zelyony settlement in the Zaporozhye region as a result of a continuation of Russian offensive operations in this sector. And little earlier, I reported that Russian armed forces also liberated Bratskaya settlement in DPR. When it comes to the situation on the battlefield, dear friends, I can give you a short update on that. In Kherson direction, there was no reports about any major developments. It's local scale skirmishes still. In Zaporozhye direction, of course, there is significant activity. Russian armed forces advancing all along the front line here on this sector. Russian troops are about to finalize clearing operation in Primorskaya settlement on the most western side of Zaporozhye sector. Russian troops are finalizing, and according to some reports, already finalized clearing operation in Lukyanovskaya settlement, and are closing in to Novopavlovka and Pavlovka settlements. Russian troops are finalizing offensive operation in Orekhov direction. Many people on internet were expecting that offensive on Orekhov will, including myself, by the way, offensive on Orekhov, a garrison of the Kiev regime, might take place simultaneously to offensive on the Gulyai Polye, but situation in the Gulyai Polye developed so rapidly, and Kiev regime's forces retreated so rapidly that I guess everyone was caught surprised by this, even Russian troops that were preparing offensive in Orekhov direction. So therefore, of course, they will take some time before a final push towards this major stronghold of the Kiev regime in the central part of Zaporozhye direction. When it comes to Gulyai Polye, dear friends, this city was liberated by Russian forces. Kiev regime's defense lines literally collapsed in this area. And I just mentioned Zelyony settlement, isn't it? That is under Russian control. And this is the area that we talking about. This is the settlement on the northern western side of Gulyai Polye itself. Initiative is in Russian hands, by the way, not just on the Zaporozhye sector, but all along the front line. When it comes to DPR, now Russian armed forces are focused big time on Konstantinovka. there are quite a number of reports about progress of the Russian armed forces in this area, and especially on the southern flank of Konstantinovka, and Russian troops are finalizing clearing operation in Biristok settlement. Russian troops are entering Konstantinovka from the southern side, and I guess, and also from the northern side, there is some advances in the Novodmitrovka area, and I guess it will take I don't know, maybe another couple of weeks, and we will see final breakthrough in Konstantinovka area. Of course, the city gonna be liberated by Russian forces. You might also interested in situation in Pokrovsk-Mirnograd area. Both cities are under complete Russian control now, although every now and then, Russian troops are finding small groups of Kiev regime's forces that are trapped to nowadays, by the way, in Mirnograd, for example. And if you are subscribed to my Patreon and Twitter X page, maybe you have seen yesterday video that I published where small group of like 5-6 militants of the Kiev regime surrendered to the Russian troops. And if you have seen video, you know how desperate the state of these troops were. Right, these militaries did not look like a battle-capable unit, man. It was painful to watch the video, right? Psychologically broken, clearly in very bad shape, but at least they made right decision, isn't it? And they contacted Russian side and surrendered, saved their lives. So clearing operation is still on the way, by the way, especially in Mirnograd, where every now and then these small groups have been identified, their location, and in case when they are surrendering, taken prisoner, in case when they are refusing to surrender, neutralized. Initiative obviously is in Russian hand, in DPR also, and in addition to Konstantinovka direction, of course, Russian troops are significantly improving positions in the northern sector of the DPR, in the Liman area. And according to reports, Russian troops are entering this city now from at least 3 directions: southern, eastern, and northern directions. I think it's a matter of literally a couple of weeks, and Liman going to be in operational encirclement. Some military experts might argue already right now that Liman, last major stronghold of the Kiev regime on the northern sector of DPR, is in operational encirclement. After Liman, well, there is a Kramatorsk-Slavyansk agglomeration left, major stronghold of the Kiev regime, and that's about it, right? Entire territory of DPR. After that will be liberated with relative ease. Relative ease, by the way. We all understand that there is nothing easy when it comes to high-intensity conflict, but once hostile side has no major strongholds, obviously it will be much more difficult for enemy to defend its lines. And well, that's about it. I guess, for a short update. Russian troops are further improving their positions in Sumy. In the Sumy region, by the way, in the Kharkov region, right? In the Kharkov direction, major developments are still taking place in the Kupiansk area. Russian troops are neutralizing these small groups of Kiev regime that infiltrated some districts of the city during the recent suicidal counterattacks. And I guess it's also a matter of week or two, and we're not gonna hear no more anything about Kupiansk for quite a while. And I mean by that, we will hear about Kupiansk only when the reconstruction works will start, and it will. This is it, I guess, for a short summary. Let's go through some other news, and well, we have reannounced this report, dear friends, that during the past 24 hours, all along the front line, Kiev regime's forces lost about 1,500 troops. I can give you some details on that. So Ukrainian army lost approximately more than 1,200 military personnel in past 24 hours. According to Valentin Pervukin, senior officer of Center Group's press center, combined arms units and unmanned aerial vehicle forces neutralized KA-8 basically up to 430 military personnel of Kiev regime. In turn, Dmitry Miskov, an officer at the Vostok Group of Forces press center, reported that in the zone of responsibility of this group, Kiev regime lost about 250 military personnel, more than 240, according to Ivan Bigma, head of the press center of the Zapad Group of Forces. Over the past 24 hours, fighters of the group have eliminated up to 180 military personnel of enemy. In area of responsibility of South Group of Forces, Kiev regime's forces suffered more than 135 casualties. This was stated by Vadim Astafiev, head of the group's press center. These are all officials, by the way, and information from military officials of Russian Defense Ministry. Sever group of forces, fighters of the Sever group of forces, including unmanned aerial vehicle units, neutralized more than 160 military personnel of Kiev regime, according to Vasily Meshkevich, head of the group's press center. Roman Kadrian, head of the Dnieper group of forces, stated that our group had eliminated up to 60 military personnel. This is obviously on the Dnieper River and in the Kherson region, generally speaking. That's the area of responsibility of Dnieper, a group of forces. So yes, overall casualty numbers are more than 1,200 just in the previous 24 hours. Tremendous casualties on enemy side. Unfortunately, obviously, Russian troops are also suffering casualties, but even Western military experts are acknowledging that rate is definitely not in favor of Kiev regime. Rate is like 9 to 10 casualties on Kiev regime side for one casualty on the Russian side. Some Western experts, by the way, and I have seen this with my own eyes, reported that actual casualty rate might be over 30 to 1 in Russia's favor. It's some tremendous numbers there, isn't it? But I saw the report when one of the, I cannot remember the name of that expert, Western expert, by the way. I saw it on Sky News, right? Also Western media. And that expert was saying that actual rate is some 30-something casualties on Kiev regime's side for every one casualty on Russian side. It's up to you. What do you believe? Even though I would like this report to be true, even I find it difficult to believe that difference is that big, right? I know Kiev regime is suffering significantly more casualties than Russian side, but 30 to 1, 35 to 1, it's you know, could be case in a situation when defense ministries of two sides are, for understandable reasons, are not sharing objective information about casualties. In such a situation, of course, all sorts of information is being spread, all sorts of opinions, and it is difficult for sure to know exactly casualty rate between their sides. It is a tragedy. You know, what I can say for sure is that it is a tragedy of Russian world that Western ruling class was able to provoke this proxy war between their brothers, basically, right? Between the brothers, when relatives are fighting relatives, literally. TASS news agency is reporting, meanwhile, that according to Axios, US and Ukraine have agreed on a peace deal, which is crazy, isn't it? I mentioned this report yesterday towards the end of the stream, I believe. Let's go through some details here, and I truly find it fascinating that Western ruling class still continues to play these games when they are talking among each other, making announcements about agreements on different stuff, and all this is happening in total absence of Russia, which truly makes no sense, isn't it? Because it's Russia that has to have its say, right? But I don't know what the hell is wrong with Western ruling class, but they don't find themselves, they don't find it's necessary to wait for Russia's reactions or to be engaged with the Russian side to actually try to de-escalate, because this is all the games, by the way. This is all games. Western ruling class is definitely not about de-escalating anything. Right. Nevertheless, let's go through some news. Axios portal claims that U.S. administration and their representatives from Kiev have agreed on a plan for a possible resolution of the Ukrainian crisis. At the portal, as the portal writes, having reached agreement with Ukraine on almost all aspects of Trump's plan, the White House wants a clear response to this proposal from Russian leadership. Earlier, the publication reported that Kirill Dmitriev, the Russian presidential special representative for investments and economic cooperation with the foreign countries and the head of the Russian Direct Investment Fund, met in Paris with American negotiators Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner following their two-day talk with the representatives of Ukraine and the European countries, coalition of willing and so on. And well, yet again, as I said, Western elites are talking among each other, agreeing on some stuff, disagreeing on some stuff, and all this stuff is happening in a situation when Russia is basically almost completely absent, right, in the process. Even though reports said that Washington is expecting now Russia's response. I mean, question is what nowadays Trump's plan actually is. I mean, does anybody knows? Because originally it was a 28-point plan that was a non-starter, absolute non-starter. I went through all 28 points and during one of the streams, and it was clear that, in my personal opinion, it was a non-starter, with the exception of a couple of points, right? Then this 28-point peace plan, so-called peace plan, transformed into 27, then 22, then 20, and that final so-called peace plan was presented by Zelensky, isn't it? Like a week or 2 weeks ago, and I went through that 20-point plan too, point by point, during the one of the live streams, and it was clear then too that this is absolutely non-starter. So when Axios is writing that White House is expecting Moscow's answer now on these proposals, what they actually mean? Moscow have to answer on what exactly? On 28-point peace plan, 27-point peace plan, 22-point peace plan, 20-point peace plan. What Moscow should answer to? It's insanity, isn't it? It's insanity. And this chaos, by the way, that is generated by Western ruling class, yet another indicator, in my personal opinion, that they are not serious about de-escalating anything. You know, they are coming up with the proposals that look like a demand of capitulation from Russian side, and this is not happening, right? If anyone will capitulate, it's a Western ruling class. It might take additional time, maybe a year, maybe 2 years, but eventually, side that will capitulate will be Western ruling class, not the Russia. That's how it is. And presence of Kirill Dmitriev, by the way, in Paris, if it's true, don't really change anything. Don't really change anything. At this point, I think these contacts between Dmitriev and Ushakov, aides of the Russian president, and Witkoff and Kushner is just Moscow's attempt to keep the door open for potential serious talks. But right now, there is no serious talks, Bob. There is no serious talks. It's just a deception operation led by Washington and London. That's all it is, right? That's what we are facing. Quite a complex, large-scale deception operation. That's all. Meanwhile, also interesting report from New York Times that bid to mine Ukraine's major lithium deposit awarded, you guess to whom? To Trump's billionaire friend. And yet again, this is New York Times is reporting. Consortium, which includes Ronald Lauder, past Kiev government commission on Thursday. The deal is essentially sealed. Favorism suggestions were denied. Although, by the way, question I have: Kiev regime can award anything and everything they want to Trump and Trump's inner circle or to anybody. But we should keep in mind that once this conflict will end, all of Ukraine, with the exception of its western parts, will be controlled by Russia. When this conflict will end, when military phase of this conflict ends, all of Ukraine, with the exception of western parts of it, will be in controlled by Russia and eventually will join Russia, right? So all these agreements that Kiev regime is signing now, it's useless, absolutely useless. And Washington can pressure whoever they want in Western Ukraine, but rest of the territory is out of question. And Western Ukraine, by the way, eventually gonna be reclaimed by Poland, Hungary, Romania, potentially, some parts might end up in Slovakia, theoretically speaking, and that's it, right? So these people are either like really stupid or are engaged in some other games because they will have no rights on anything on Russian territory. And yet again, everything east of Western Ukraine is going to be Russia. That's how it is. RIA Novosti is also reporting that, meanwhile, dear friends, we are seeing day in, day out hostilities being increased from Western side, from US included. And I will just remind you that according to reports, and Trump personally confirmed this, US lawmakers might go ahead with voting on anti-Russian sanctions bill, which is more directed on partners of the Russian Federation than Russia, because according to this law that was written by mainly Lindsey Graham and Blumenthal and their teams, this law targets Russian trade partners and gives Trump a legal basis to impose up to 500% tariffs. So if anybody still thinks that Trump's administration is about de-escalation with Moscow and they will de-escalate with Moscow and pull out US from this proxy war, think again. Talk is cheap. Policies matter, right? And on the policy level, all Trump's administration does is further escalation with Russia. And dear friends, just this morning, I have read some reports according to which new transport planes, a new package, military aid package, is being sent to Kiev regime by US. Some military transport planes, military cargo planes, already are descending to Poland, where one of the major hubs are to transfer weapons to Kiev regime, right? So that's another indicator for you that Trump is anything but a peacemaker. Just saying, because some people still to nowadays are thinking that Trump gonna pull out US from this proxy war, which is not happening, man. Unfortunately, but it's not happening. And Moscow knows this. Moscow knows this because, for example, former Russian president and current deputy chairman of the Security Council, Dmitry Medvedev, commented yesterday on a number of issues, including this potential new sanctions bill against Russia and Russian trade partners that Trump approved, green-lighted. And he commented, US will use sanctions to try and pressure Russia into unacceptable compromises. And even after that, the head of the White House would still impose them regardless of the circumstances. So Medvedev is clearly saying that, you know what, no matter what, US will escalate with Russia anyways, right? They will impose more sanctions. They will try to impose more pressure anyways, regardless of circumstances. So if Medvedev understands this, I can assume that Putin understands this also, right? And soon, by the way, very soon, I think Russia will distance itself from Trump's administration in the same way as it was during the Biden's administration, because this policy of the open door for talks just creates absolutely unnecessary questions at this point, right? Because people are asking what the hell either Ushakov or Dmitriev are doing, talking to these morons, man, that represent Trump, Witkov, Kushner, or whomever. What the hell? We all understand that US is not de-escalating. They had enough time. They had enough time to pull out US from this proxy war. After all, it's a year now that Trump is in office, right? So they had enough time. And they did not. All we see on the policy level is escalation, and therefore I think maybe, you know, like little time, week or two, month, and I guess Moscow will completely shut down any talks with Washington, because it's useful. It's useless. It's useless, right? There is no point in it, and Medvedev clearly knows this, right? He's saying it openly, and he's not just former president of Russia, but he's, I believe, close friend of Vladimir Putin. Probably they have talked about the stuff a million times, right? And he is a deputy chairman of the Security Council, current deputy chairman of the Security Council. So he's still high-ranking official, and his opinion matters, right? And yet again, he is on point. I mean, take a look at the policies, by the way. Weapons flow continues to prolong this proxy war, weapons flow from US. Money continues to be spent by US on this war. Some might say US is no longer transferring money itself, cash, right, for the Kyiv regime, but everything that US does to prolong this proxy war, from intelligence, right, political support, media support, everything costs money. It's money, right? Maybe US is not giving Zelensky, officially at least, billions and billions and billions, as it was during the Biden's administration, but everything that Trump administration is implementing on a policy level is money, including weapons that are being transferred to Kyiv regime. And even though NATO Secretary General Rutte said that, well, US is now selling to Europeans these weapons, right? US is not gifting these weapons and already sent like $5 billion of worth of weapons. Do we believe in that? Do we actually believe in that? This is a talking point of Trump, isn't it? For domestic purposes in the US, that all the weapons that are sent to Kyiv regime is brought by Europeans. But are we sure that this is true? I am not. I'm definitely not inclined to trust either Trump or Rutte, by the way. So how we know that it's only $5 billion worth of weapons that Trump's administration sent to Kyiv regime, and not $10 billion worth of weapons or $15 billion worth of weapons? We don't know that. Nothing to be said there about latest escalatory steps from the US, by the way. They hijacked Russian flag tanker, couple of days ago, and yesterday they hijacked another one that, according to some reports, also linked to Russia, although not under Russian flag. So, yeah, man, if anyone had any hopes in regards to Trump's administration and the potential de-escalation between US and Russia, those hopes are gone now, right? There is no reason to maintain any of it. What is interesting, by the way, Italian Prime Minister Meloni stated that, according to her, it's time for EU talks with Russia. And Meloni echoed basically France's Macron in this regards, because Macron was also, like a week ago or 10 days ago, said that, well, it is necessary to talk to Russian side, and he will use her first opportunity to have a conversation with Putin, and he might have conversation with Putin, by the way, in upcoming days, potentially. I'm saying so because there was an exchange of prisoners between France and Russia, and that could be a sign that maybe there is some preparations uh, between Moscow and Paris to organize either phone conversation or who knows, maybe even visit of Macron to Moscow. Could be the case, but yes, Meloni is echoing basically Macron in this statement. She also called to appoint a special EU envoy for Ukraine for such a talks. Some European, some so-called leaders of Europe, including Meloni, probably, and her inner circle, probably are realizing how damaging for their countries this extreme Russophobia and anti-Russian policies are, and they are trying now to prepare ground for a potential improvement of their economical relationships. First of all, once this conflict will end, but you know what? I don't think this is possible really. Damage is so serious that I don't think any Russian government under the Putin or under the whomever now or in decades to come will be inclined to build a close ties with the European states, because they cannot be trusted. I mean that's all, right? Of course, it will be great if we had a good relationships with the European states, but is it possible? I mean, realistically speaking, after what they did, no, it's not possible, man. We cannot trust them, right? And therefore, best we can do is to just stay away from Europe and from the collective West, generally speaking, as much as possible, right? Not necessarily to be hostile towards them. Once this conflict will end, best we can do is to just freaking stay away and keep them away from us, right? From Russia, because they never can be trusted, man. Never, right? Theoretically speaking, sometime in the far future, maybe societies of these Western countries, either in Italy or France or US or UK or whatever, or whichever, maybe in far future societies of these countries will actually manage to reclaim the control over their own destiny, their own country, right? But this is a prospect of theoretical prospect of far future. Today, tomorrow, day after, this is absolutely impossible, right? And Western societies will have no say, as they have no say now. That's it. So therefore, best we can do now and for decades to come is to stay away as far as possible from the collective West. So, Meloni might have some practical reasons to seek some contacts with the Russian side, but we don't need no freaking contacts with Italy, man, or with France, or with any other Western countries. We just want to be left alone, right? We learned the lesson. That's enough, I think, and I'm quite sure vast majority of public here in Russia are on the same page with me on that, right? We cannot trust these people, man. We just cannot. And I'm talking about elites, Western elites, obviously. Veterans of our community know perfectly well that I'm never about people, ordinary people. I never consider them to be enemies or anything like that. I'm always talking about Western elites, decision makers, right? And on this very topic, by the way, what about this report that UK is about to spend or allocate at least $270 million on a troops for a multinational force in Ukraine? London still pushes this narrative. And London, when I say London, I mean globalists, obviously. British aristocracy, British political class, financial elites, they are leading force among globalists, obviously. And so, yes, they are still pushing this freaking crazy narrative that they're going to be able to force Russian hands to agree on the ceasefire, and then they're going to deploy their troops into Kyiv-controlled territory. And yeah, good luck with that, man. Not happening, not happening. But if globalists and their puppet regimes in Europe will go ahead anyways and start deploying their troops, then you know what Moscow's position is on that. Russian militarists will, and Russian political leadership and military leadership was very clear that these NATO troops on the Kyiv-controlled territory will be seen as a hostile and a legit target, and the appropriate actions will be taken. So people in UK, people in France, and in all the countries that are publicly, openly saying that they're going to deploy their troops should be ready, by the way, right? Because in most cases, these troops that they're going to deploy, they're going to send to the slaughter, London, Paris, and their other Western capitals, these are basically ordinary people, right? They are ordinary people, and they're going to be sent on the slaughter, and their family members are ordinary people, right? And the last thing they want is to receive their family member in the body bag. And they will. If they stay quiet in UK, in France, elsewhere in the collective West, if they did not do anything or to stop this madness of their political elites, eventually they're going to start losing their loved ones in big numbers, by the way, like in thousands. UK already lost a couple of hundred of its troops, right? But it's nothing compared to what is going to happen to British contingent if it will be deployed into Kyiv-controlled territory. And talk is that UK and France might be able to deploy about 15,000 troops. It's laughable, man. 15,000 troops, I mean, seriously. They will last on the battlefield in high intensity conflict, maybe like a couple of weeks, and that's about it. Really, I mean, 15,000 troops from France and UK will last on the battlefield I don't know, man, a couple of weeks, months maybe, if they are lucky. That's it, man. So people in Europe have to know this, man. They have to know what high intensity conflict is and how high casualty rate is on the battlefield. Because people's mindset, psyche, working in a different ways, strange ways even, right? Maybe they think that, well, they will, UK will send troops, and like it was in Iraq and Afghanistan, maybe every now and then one or two troops will be killed somewhere. No, man, and that's it. But no, it's not going to be like that. Entire contingents of UK and France going to be obliterated. Whatever number of troops they're going to send, like 7,000, 10,000, 20,000, Russian troops will take care of it. So someone have to let the European people, man, especially in the countries that are this keen to send their troops and to provoke direct conflict with Russia, people there in those countries have to really do something before this Rubicon is crossed, man. Already so many red lines have been crossed by the Western ruling class, right? But yeah, at some point they're going to be red line, crossing of which is going to be fatal for our enemies, right? And as I said, by the way, US continues its hostile activity against Russia. It's not just the European states, but US, of course, which is a leading force in this proxy war that West is waging against Russia. And US Southern Command confirmed that they hijacked another tanker, Olina. So let me give you some details on that. US Southern Command officially confirmed the seizure of an oil tanker, Olina. The statement was published on their agency's official X account and accompanied by video showing the operation. During the operation, Marines and sailors from a Joint Task Force Southern Spear, acting in support of the US Department of Homeland Security, boarded the tanker Olina from their aircraft carrier USS Gerald Ford. The vessel's seizure In the Caribbean Sea, procedure without incidents. Operation took place near the island of Trinidad, Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. According to Reuters, their tanker had previously sailed to Venezuela under the flag of Eastern Timor. And Timor is, of course, right neighbor of Indonesia, right there, East Timor. In Oceania, by the way. So yes, another vessel is hijacked by US. I have seen some reports on the Russian segment of internet that allegedly this vessel was involved in transporting Russian oil. Um, could be case for sure. And clearly, by the way, US and their other hostile states, other enemies of Russia, they are trying to impose sort of a maritime embargo on Russia, right? Because they are targeting tankers that are bound to Russia or linked to Russia one way or another. It's no longer about Venezuela, by the way. It's about attacking Russia. And you know what? If anybody thinks in the West that with this activity they're gonna destroy Russian economy, well, I would recommend them to learn some more about Russia and income of the Russian budget. It will not destroy Russian economy, by the way, but it will force emerging multipolar world to accelerate integration processes, to accelerate creation of the alternative banking and financial system. It will accelerate divide of this world on the Western part and the rest. And this is unavoidable, I think. Some experts are talking about world being divided between some major players, geopolitical players, US, China, Russia, some others potentially, but I don't think this is going to be their case. I think what will happen is that these criminal, illegal, absolutely illegal, by the way, criminal terrorist activity of the Western countries, US, UK, and others, will only accelerate the divide of this world when on one side there is some 15-20% of the humanity, collective West that is, and on the other side is collective rest of the world, by the way. So one side is collective West, other side is rest of the world, and therefore if anybody in Washington actually thinks that they're going to reconquer Western hemisphere, well, they can dream about it, but not happening. Not happening. I'm 100% convinced in that, and even more, by the way. At this point, all we have to do in the rest of the world, outside of the collective West, is accelerate integration processes, do whatever is necessary, right? Build our military wing for our organizations, right? BIGS first of all, and process is underway, and I give you in a minute a report about it. We have to accelerate, as I said, the military wing, build up there also economical cooperation, and we need to build their alternative financial and the banking system to make sure that trade in this 80% of the world, right, that is outside of the West, trade will be done without any significant, at least, influence of the Western world, right? Tremendously hostile Western elites, let's say. And once we will do that, and even in the process, we can just try as much as we can to stay away from the collective West and chill a little bit, right? Because we're going to observe how Western world is collapsing under its own weight. It's inevitable, by the way. It's absolutely inevitable. Western ruling class push the Western world to its limits, and all that is expected now or can be expected now in regards to collective West is a collapse, total collapse. And we should just stay away. We should just stay away and let their physics take over, right? Western ruling class cannot sustain its own weight, and it will collapse. And more craziness they will do, by the way, more heavier they will become. So it will accelerate this collapse process. But meanwhile, it seems like not very far fewer, far few people in the West actually understand the dangers of this madness that Western ruling elites are demonstrating, and therefore they continue craziness. So, U.S. president actually confirmed that they seize tanker, right, and this tanker that they called Venezuelan, and he also said, by the way, that there is a cooperation between Washington and Caracas, which is actually true. Actually true. It's a matter of interpretation, of course. What we will call cooperation. I mean, regime in Caracas is a Washington's proxy regime, right? It's not the regime that serves Venezuelan people. It's just too clear, right? But nevertheless, there is some contacts there, and videos are circulating on internet that U.S. delegation actually went into Caracas. They bombed Caracas a couple of days ago, kidnapped their president, and now delegation from the U.S. State Department, and God knows from where is in Caracas, and they're basically issuing orders, right? Which minister will do what? So if this is a cooperation, if cooperation is the right word to use, then okay, let's be it. But I think this is something different, and it's a matter of time. It's a matter of time, and people of Venezuela will wake up to the reality. They will realize that their government betray them, and they're going to start armed resistance. In some ways, process is already underway, right? Also, I think I have to mention this report that U.S. Released two Russian citizens from the crew of earlier hijacked Russian tanker Marinera. I remind you that Press Secretary of the White House, Caroline Lewitter, threatened these sailors that they're going to end up in a court and prosecuted in U.S. But well, I guess Washington decided that that would be too much of an escalation with Russia, maybe, and they released these two sailors. Okay, but well, this is just a tiny drop in a sea of escalation from the U.S. So therefore, nothing, in the principle, nothing going to change by this gesture. It would be just a extra headache for Washington if they will actually prosecute these people, and probably they just get rid of this unnecessary headache. That's all. Iran, of course, we have to talk about Iran, by the way, and well, on Sky News, there was accidentally, I guess, information was shared that NGOs, Western NGOs, bring into Iran, Western NGOs and Western financed NGOs bring to Iran this Starlink dishes, right? Starlink equipment that is used now by Western assets to orchestrate all this uprising or the unrest, right? And why am I not surprised, by the way? Why am I not surprised? Obviously, if any country actually wants to be independent, have sovereignty, have to completely ban local NGOs to really receive money from outside of the country, and especially from the Western world, obviously, by the way. But not just from the Western world, because Western elites will find a way, right? NGOs, by the way, have to be completely banned from taking money from outside of the country, only from within, right? NGOs, public figures, should be absolutely banned to have any contact with the Western NGOs, no matter what the name of this NGO is. They can come up with a name that will tell you, oh, they are up to something good, NGO for protection of the whales in ocean. And you will think, I mean, this is about whales. I mean, nothing extraordinary. No, man, they will use that exactly NGO to tunnel the money and the potential equipment through their assets in your country. So don't allow your NGOs, your public figures, to be in contact with their Western funds, Western governmental funds, or governmental financed NGOs, or with anything Western, right? Just don't allow this to happen. Otherwise, you're gonna suffer. Western secret services will use this to infiltrate your country, right? So I think this law on the foreign agent is too soft, right? I think there has to be complete ban. Right now, citizens here in Russia, for example, citizens are allowed to receive funds from Western NGOs, right? All they have to do is declare that they receive funds through some Western infrastructure that CIA, MI6, and other Western secret services are controlling, right? And once they will declare this, they will receive status of their foreign agent, and that's it. Really? We should completely ban Russian public figures, NGOs, to have anything to do at all with their Western financial and their banking system, right? Western funds, government funds, non-governmental funds, no matter. Complete ban. You have to build a freaking iron wall, by the way, right? In this regard. Otherwise, Western secret services will infiltrate your country anyways. And that's what is happening in Iran. One would think that, well, Iran was trying to isolate itself, or not necessarily isolate itself, but save itself from the Western or Israeli infiltration. Well, how they did, by the way. If they were allowing Western NGOs to operate on their soil, then, well, that's quite something, man. Quite something. So yes, on the Sky News, by the way, they said it openly that Western NGOs bring in some freaking equipment, man. Insanity, isn't it? Insanity, by the way. And well, few more news, dear friends. Is there any technical issues, by the way? Scooby, thank you very much for a gift that you made of a premium subscription on Rumble. Thank you very much. This is basically a $5 donation, by the way. Hopefully live is okay on Rumble and on YouTube also. And okay, if it's all good, then I will continue, dear friends. There was no freezes, isn't it, on the screen? Freezes of the screen. So I guess this notebook, this older one, is actually more capable than this new one, relatively new one, by the way. It happens, but probably there was some sound issues with this notebook, no? Anyways, let's continue. A couple of more news, dear friends. Couple of more news. And that's about it for this news segment. So yes, Iran, by the way, Trump once again threatened Iran that there will be some consequences if Iranian law enforcement agencies will deal harshly with the so-called protesters, by the way. It's a violent riots, right? And there are so many videos, by the way, when these rioters are using weapons, right, and shooting at their law enforcement or agency officers. But nevertheless, Trump did threatened Iran. He said, and this is quote, I say to the Iranian leaders, you'd better not start shooting because we'll start shooting too. So you tell me what you will make of this threat. Obviously, US, Israeli intelligence services, British intelligence services, French intelligence services are actively involved in this destabilization of the Iran. And if they succeed, by the way, if they succeed in overthrowing government in Iran, well, that will be very dark page in Iran's history, in history of Iran's people, because um, they're gonna experience something much worse than people in Syria experienced. Because Western ruling class and their allies are not about freeing and then helping people of Iran. No, what they want is full-scale regional destabilization in the Middle East and a full-scale regional war. And to shut down navigation in the Persian Gulf. And to achieve this, by the way, and to sustain destabilization in the region in the long terms, they have to, I mean, Western ruling class and their allies, they have to provoke confrontation on a sectarian, that is on religious and ethnic lines. And that's exactly what they are doing, by the way. That's exactly what they are doing. So if anybody is thinking that, well, Iranian people gonna overthrow government now and they're gonna live happy ever after, well, this is just an illusion, by the way. Western ruling class is destabilizing Iran not because they want Iranians to live in peace and prosperity. They have a very different calculus, very different calculus. Bloomberg, meanwhile, is reporting that Turkey, by the way, interested in building sort of a NATO alliance, right, in the Muslim world, and they want to join Pakistan and Saudi Arabia in their nuclear treaty, in their Mutual Protection Act, and maybe Turkey will receive such an invitation from Pakistan and from Saudi Arabia. Although, by the way, it's not going to be easy because Turkey and Saudi Arabia are competing with each other for the leadership in the Sunni Muslim world, right? And they are quite hostile towards each other. But nevertheless, if this will happen, if Turkey will actually join this agreement between Islamabad and Riyadh on mutual protection, then that's going to be a game changer, of course, in the region, because I remind you, dear friends, Pakistan is a nuclear armed country, right? So if alongside Saudi Arabia, Turkey will also have this nuclear umbrella of Pakistan, of course, that will embolden Ankara to act a little more tougher when time comes, according to their calculus, against Israel. So I'm quite sure Israeli leadership, intelligence, militaries are closely monitoring these developments, because last thing they want is Turkey to have any nuclear freaking umbrella, right, from Pakistan. You might say, well, Turkey is a NATO member state, so they have nuclear umbrella anyways. Not really. Not really, by the way. Turkey is a NATO member state because Western ruling class wanted to use Turkey. Not because they wanted to protect Turkey in any way, shape, or form, right? They are not about that. Otherwise, you tell me why Turkey is still not a member of the EU if Western ruling class is all about helping people and protecting people. Why Turkey is still not an EU member? You know? So Turkey does not have no nuclear umbrella, by the way. It's all fiction. But agreement with Pakistan might change that, actually. So let's see. This is, I think, topic that worth our attention because it might have far-reaching consequences. And as I mentioned, dear friends, there is a process of building a nuclear wing for the BRICS, right? And for example, we have this report from TASS News Agency that naval drill involving Russia kicks off in South Africa. Let me give you some details on that. So the Wheel for Peace 2026 naval drills began in South Africa with the participation of several BRICS plus countries. South African Defense and the Military Veterans Ministry reported the exercises is scheduled to take place on from January 9th to 16th, 2026 in South African territorial waters. It is a multinational maritime engagement with China serving as a lead nation, the ministry said in a post on Facebook. Pretoria has not yet named the full list of participants in the exercises, mentioning only China and South Africa, nor the total number of the ships involved. South African media reports that ships from Iran and Russia are also participating in Wheel for Peace 2026, while Indonesia and Ethiopia have observer status. And earlier difference, there was reports that these exercises are taking place under the BRICS umbrella. This is a BRICS initiative, right? And clearly there is a certain movement inside the BRICS from certain countries to accelerate process of building a military wing, which is absolutely necessary, by the way. We are in a war now, right? This world is already engaged in a world war. When on one side there is a collective West, and on the other side is a multipolar world, emerging multipolar world, all rest of the world, right? It's a clearly war is going on here, and attack on Venezuela is just one more indicator of that, right? Attack on Russia, attack on Venezuela, potential attack on Cuba, right? Constant escalation with China, pressure India. Western ruling class is pushing for this war, by the way, right? And is engaged in this war against multipolarity. And we definitely need some defensive mechanisms, for sure. We definitely need some defensive mechanisms, and I don't know what it's gonna be. BRICS is a military wing, or maybe military alliance will be separate. Military alliance will be created by BRICS member states and some other countries, but we definitely need a military wing, by the way. Separately, we are not as strong as we can be together, right? So we have to be together. It's simple. It's simple, and it is good. It is good that under the BRICS umbrella, certain movements are happening in terms of building this military wing, but we have to accelerate, man. We have to accelerate, because you can see speed, by the way, by which Western ruling class is operating. You can see speed with which Western ruling class is operating, man. Look what they did to Venezuela, like that, in a second, right? So, you know, we all are at risk, and we have to do something about it. We have to do something about it. And dear friends, this is it for a new segment. Let me check right now. Let me check now some media outlets, by the way, for potential breaking news. Finland left a convention about landmines, anti-personnel mines. Well, interesting. They're gonna mine, I guess, whole borderline with Russia, potentially, or who knows what is the actual purpose of this decision. I'll give you some details on that later on, dear friends. Let me check some other media outlets if there is any breaking news. Trump warns he may go hard way on Greenlander. Well, okay. Let's see what he gonna do about Greenland. By the way, do you believe that U.S. actually gonna invade Greenland? I find it difficult to believe, man. I mean, anything is possible. Obviously, anything is possible, but I mean, to invade Greenland, what for, man? They are in control of Greenland, anyways. I mean, they can build whatever military assets they want there. Denmark is open about it. Local Greenland government is open about it. It's very, very, you know. I think her whole this Greenland story, by the way, is about Northern Maritime Sea Route, right? Not necessarily about some rare earth that they can be on Greenland. But nevertheless, there can be some agreements reached between Denmark and the US, right? So that they will cooperate in terms of Arctics. Why US wants to like take Greenland under complete control? I don't know, man. I don't let them deal with this situation. Western ruling class, by the way, right? And they are not that united. This is also something to keep in mind, that Western ruling class is still powerful, very powerful, but it's not united, not a monolith, right? Every now and then they have some internal confrontation about different topics, about strategies and stuff, and this Greenland story is clearly demonstrating that, isn't it? So what else is there? Russian armed forces neutralized some energy facilities on Kiev controlled territory as a result of long-range strikes and logistical lines. Okay, that's about it. No breaking news, dear friends, for this moment. Hopefully, you did find the news segment informative and useful. And in that case, please click that like button and leave some commentary. Hopefully, there was no issues with the sound and the video, as it was the case in previous two live streams. During the previous two live streams, there was no super chat, by the way, on Rumble, so there is nothing to react to there. In this regard, let me check Boosty. There was nothing through Boosty either, and I guess nothing through PayPal. Otherwise, Anna probably would drop screenshots. So this is it then. I will end this live stream on that. If you want to support my work, dear friends, and this independent media project from Russia, you can do it through several means. You can donate through PayPal or Boosty platforms. Link is on this video in the description box and in the pinned comment. You can subscribe to my Patreon page or page on Boosty. I have extra content on a quite regular basis there. Lately, I start making these behind-the-scenes programs and the news update programs together. And yesterday, I was unable to make a new episode for reasons that I will explain in today's episode, right? But I will have a new episode today for sure. So subscribe, dear friends. It's not just a news update, these behind-the-scenes programs, but generally about life in Russia, my life here, and some that kind of stuff. It's a vlog type of video, like vlogger and the news update together. So yes, if you are interested, subscribe to my Patreon and Boosty pages. Links are on this video in the description box and in the pinned comment. And that's about it. Tomorrow we will have a big community chat and fundraising stream. Hopefully it will work out good. Because this week, let's be honest, was quite weak in terms of financial support for this project. But nevertheless, I'm truly grateful to everyone who donated during this week. And there was a couple of donations, by the way. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful day, great weekend, and see you tomorrow. Bye for now.